Heinrich Bernard.
Starting with the
Ackerman.
letter A, the reading of those 2,977 names at the outset of this 20th anniversary ceremony at Ground Zero. We just heard from the father of one of the flight attendants that in that first plane that hit. We heard the moment of silence. We're in the company of Carol Tosone, professor of social work at New York University. Thank you for joining us on this day. We've been talking in the build-up to that 8:46 a.m. moment of silence about the lingering physical trauma, what with so many people who've since developed respiratory ailments and the like. There's also the mental stress and the mental trauma that continues. You know, Carol, there's an Irish pub down the block here, and we were speaking with some of the first responders, and this is a moment where they come together, and part of the therapy is having a drink together. What is the therapy on a 9/11?
I think you'll see that for a lot of the firefighters and the police officers. And what it is, I saw this also in my research with the Troubles. It's kind of like they feel that their mates, if you will, can understand. No one can understand in the way they can. And rather than a formal therapy, it's more getting together informally and have a shared understanding of what their experience is, that a mental health professional sitting in a room with them couldn't have that same understanding. So it's a bond that they share, that they deeply respect and appreciate with one another.
Huge trauma that, some talk about the nightmares that they got for years afterwards.
Right. Absolutely. Many of them, I developed videos for the 9/11 responders with Project Liberty. It was reaching out to all of the people who were impacted in New York. And it's still an issue to this day. And the anniversary certainly brings up reactions for everybody, including myself, who was with a patient when the plane flew over the building. So
you were where?
I was nearby in the village when the plane flew over the building.
So about, just for our viewers, about 30 blocks north of here?
About.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for everyone. And there have been huge strides in 20 years. We were speaking with reporters yesterday who were with the firefighters and saying to us how they've learned to open up more than they used to.
Mm-hmm. I think out of necessity, I think also a growing appreciation for what mental health practice can offer. I think increasingly people have. Also, what's been important is a lot of the use of peer counselors, both for the general public as well as for firefighters and other first responders, so that it's the idea that they've been through the crisis, they know what the experience is like, and people can relate better in that way. So I think also mental health has learned to become more flexible in responding to their needs. So I think it's been a mutual process in these 20 years.
Yeah, shared trauma for first responders, shared trauma as well for the public at large. Before I ask you about that, let's listen to some of those survivors and some of those people who were deeply affected by what happened on the day.
It never goes away for those of us that were there that day, survived that day. It's something that lives with you every single day, but what it does is also motivates me to live a better life. You know, September 11th did not destroy us in the way the terrorists wanted us to be destroyed.
On that day, 2,749 people died at the Trade Center, 176 from my company, and 19 from my floor. The first 14 months, if you ask me how I was fine. I was alive, I was fine. I just didn't realize how it affected me. You know, I was functioning, but it hadn't really hit home until 14 months later.
Some days you have vivid memories of the day, and most of them are sad memories. But some of them are positive. You know, you recognize what heroism was on display for all to see that day, and it was real. You know, that there was tremendous trepidation and fear going into our operations that day, but we did it.
We're talking about it with Carol Tosone, professor of social work at New York University at NYU. You talk about the concept of collective or shared trauma. Explain to us what that means.
Well, when mental health professionals are working with patients, oftentimes they can be traumatized, what's called secondary trauma or vicarious traumatization, meaning that if you had a trauma and you're telling me your narrative, I may become traumatized in the process of hearing it. But shared trauma is if you and I were both exposed to the same collective trauma, such as 9/11, I too would have my own trauma narrative to tell. So in other words, the clinician is dually impacted, both primarily, as a member of a citizen of the region, as well as secondarily through our professional work. So it's really a double impact. So much of my research post 9/11 has been making people aware of this, and I've looked at it in relation to Hurricane Katrina with New Orleans clinicians. I've looked at it in relation to the long-term impact of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, et cetera.
And you've had...
And now COVID.
And now COVID, I was going to say, because this collective trauma is a shared experience for everyone. And you could say for New Yorkers, September 11th is a shared experience for everyone, but certainly for COVID, right?
COVID is a global experience, so shared trauma has tremendous relevance, more so than any other thing that anyone's experienced. But I think on 9/11, everybody's a New Yorker.
And for you, Carol Tosone, what does this day mean?
Well, I'll try not to cry. I think it's profoundly impactful because I've dedicated my life to understanding this experience and helping clinicians who are doing this work.
It's one of these unexpected moments. We were reflecting on it as we look out over where the Twin Towers used to be. Of course, death is always unfair, and trauma is always unfair. But the fact that it wasn't a war we saw coming, if you want to call it a war.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think everybody was taken by surprise. You can see that when you see the vintage footage of everybody reacting to the towers. People were naive and they thought, how could a plane be so stupid to fly into the towers? But people who had experienced terrorism, I know from my patients, they knew right away what it was.
The sort of a nihilistic design of that, and then you could say part of the trauma that lingers as well is the way some people cope with it. Some are complete denial. I mean, the posts on social media saying we make this all up.
I can't even fathom.
About?
I can't even fathom, because if they have to acknowledge it, then there's many other things that they have to acknowledge, politically. And also, what 9/11 destroyed was our illusion of really a safe world. We thought we were somewhat insulated here, and we really learned we weren't.
Do you feel as though there is that awareness that America's grown up a little?
I think it depends on who you talk to, but everything post 9/11, I mean, you take your shoes off when you're going through the metal detectors at the airport. You can only carry small liquids. I mean, our life post 9/11, more security, etc. It's made a lasting impact. We can't be innocent.
And one final question. For a lot of those survivors, there is this feeling, just like Holocaust survivors feel guilt for why am I alive and not them?
Right.
What do you tell those people?
I actually have a colleague and friend who had worked at one of the firms where almost everyone had died, and he was late that day. And he wonders that every day, and he feels very guilty, but what he does is he dedicates himself, he doubles himself in terms of making sure he does good work with the clients he serves so that their memory is honored. Someone else I know volunteers as a docent at the 9/11 memorial. He's since retired, and his life is dedicated to never forgetting the people that died in his firm. Absolutely. So, and when you're actively doing something to better others, helping others helps yourself. So that's why everybody volunteers on 9/11.
All right, a beautiful lesson. Carol Tosone, many thanks for joining us here on this day.
My pleasure. Thank you.